Cosplay Stitch and Seam. I'm Pannon.
I'm Fire.
And I'm David.
Hooray!
Yay!
Oh,
it's
good.
another episode.
How have you guys been? I haven't seen you in so long.
It's been like over 24 hours and so much has changed, Pannon.
I know.
So much.
The world is just a different place.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not thrown up anymore.
Oh, that's good.
That part is very good.
Yeah. I mean, if we went back a year ago to like just a year ago, that statement of it's been 24 hours and the world has changed is very possibly like, that tracks. That tracks.
Uh-huh.
Oh
my goodness. Well, to all you listeners at home, as always, if you want to reach out to us, you can do that via email, which is cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com,
Or you can go to cosplaystitchandseam.com and fill out the Google form, or
send us a message on our Facebook page. I'm mixing it up today, apparently.
Hey!
Join our Facebook group. Have an awesome community at your back. Join our Work in Progress Wednesdays. And if you're not a big fan of the Facebook, hang out long enough and you will see our Discord link every now and again. Or you could just, reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to help you out there. And while you're on the internet, if you want to help out the show a little bit, you could always share the podcast with a friend. Join that very exclusive secret club. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast.
Sorry, you were on such a good roll too with the secret club.
That's all staying in. All right. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast, Podchaser, wherever they let you. We really appreciate those. They kind of help the algorithm. And if you've got a few bucks lying around, you want to kick them our way, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/cosplay stitch. And for $3 a month, we give you a shout out on the show. For $5, we get to have you join us in the Cosplay Chronicles.
Chronicle.
We just did a session at the time of this recording yesterday, and I just want to say I love the players, not only because of like how creative and whatnot they are, but as a DM, kind of the story kind of got away from me in a way of like improv versus my notes. And I sat down with all of them afterwards and was like, hey, is that okay? Are we okay? Do we need a debrief or something along those lines? And everyone kind of came to the table and was like, I'm doing great. This is my thoughts. It was a great session in and off the table. Like, I loved it.
Yay,
really
I'm
good.
glad.
I super enjoyed it.
So speaking of Cosplay Chronicles, when's our next one coming up?
So we will not be doing one in the month of August. We will be doing SaltCon on the 1st of August, which would be normally our live stream day. And as a DM, I'm going to take some self-care. I think all of you would appreciate me taking care of myself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we will not be doing one until September the 5th.
Okay. Instead, we will be doing SaltCon. We still have tickets available if you guys want to join us for a seat at the table. We'll be doing a Cosplay Chronicles one-shot. That'll be August 1st, 1 p.m. That's a Sunday. And that's here locally in Salt Lake City up at the Davis Conference Center. If you want to be part of our campaign, it'd be a lot of fun.
It'd be so cool to have you there. Become part of the canon.
Yeah. As always, you can check out foxbeautycosmetics.com, and we actually show a lot of the products and stuff on our stream just in case you want to see some of it live, and they send us a lot of great stuff, and it's Fox with 2 X's, foxbeautycosmetics.com, and you can get 10% off your all vegan, not tested on animal makeup products.
Heck yeah.
So, just to continue our theme of last week, we are finishing up one of the fan fictions we didn't get to last time, and both V-Fire and I were not done writing ours, but now we are! So, we're going to subject you to some of our writing, and hopefully that's
Mine's
fun.
Terrible.
Oh, stop.
I don't write a whole lot.
As long as you have fun. That's the best part. Do you want to go first and get it out of the way? Or you want to save for last? And then everyone just builds the anticipation?
Maybe.
We're going to be right in the middle.
I don't even know. I'm nervous.
Well,
I don't want to be first. That's what I know. I don't want to be first.
Why don't we let one of our writers go first? Did you want to go ahead with that, David?
I'd be more than happy to. We have Dr. Steggy writing another one called Homecoming, another Legend of Zelda story. Found this one on Archive of Our Own, or AO3. I'm going to get better at saying it, I promise. This one was actually just released a little bit earlier this year, like 3 weeks ago. So hot off the presses, as they say. So without any further ado, Dr. Steggy, Homecoming. He had never been so comfortable in his own bed. The sheets were clean, their scent like a summer day. The mattress was just soft enough to sink into, though he was on his side all the way to the edge, running along the wall of his loft. One blanket, just warm enough to be cozy. He faced the wall with his nose nearly touching it, his arms crossed across his chest, ankles crossed, trying to take up as little room as possible. And then fingertips along his shoulder, a soft whisper. What's wrong? They'd ended the calamity together and then found themselves alone in a world that had moved on 100 years ago. And while there were still plenty of people making their way in that world, they knew no one really understood what they'd done together. And they took their time slowly winding their way from central Hyrule to Hateno Village, taking in the views when they could and camping under the stars, avoiding what civilization was left. It had seemed right for them to be alone in what they'd done together. There was an easiness between them and under the night sky. Then they got to his little house on the edges of Hateno, and somehow things changed without him, at least realizing. They had a routine on the road. He cooked dinner, and when they stopped for the night, while she unpacked their bedrolls and blankets, they ate in silence, watching the sun set and the stars rise. After dinner, sometimes she read to him, and sometimes he brushed her hair. When they settled for the night, they were spooned together. It was cold at night. Huddling together by the fire made sense. They shouldn't need to huddle under his roof. His house was warm, with sturdy walls protecting them from the elements, warm enough that they could sleep apart. Maybe only he felt warm. He made dinner while she explored his home, and found her way to the loft and the chest with the linens. She'd made the bed and opened a window to air things out, and when she came down for dinner, he saw that she'd change out of a royal blue travel gear and into something she'd found rummaging through his things. When he'd woken up on the plateau, he had just a ragged shirt and a pair of slightly too short pants. They'd been better than nothing until he figured his way off the plateau. He never quite had the heart to throw them away once he acquired better clothes. He wasn't sure why. He didn't think he was sentimental like that, so he kept them. And once he had the house, he stuffed them in a drawer and forgot about them, until Zelda walked into his great room wearing them. He didn't think she saw his double take. He felt warm and fidgety, looking at her in his clothes. Though he wasn't sure why, she was covered just fine. It was less revealing than the gear she wore out and about. He shook his head to clear it. She settled at the table without a word, and he served her dinner before taking his own seat across from her. They ate wordlessly, in comfortable silence. When they finished dinner, Link rested his elbows on the table, folded his hands in front of him. He can't watch the stars rise from inside your great room. You don't camp in front of the fireplace. There's no need when there are walls. Look, he started. You take the bed. I'll sleep downstairs. No. The word is terse and small and unmovable. Please, stay with me. I can sleep on the floor? No, she insisted. Stay with me. He looks away from her, swallowing hard. Are you going to ravish me in my sleep? Am I going to what? No! Link, what's the big deal? We have been sleeping next to each other the past 2 weeks. He cast his eyes to the floor, tapping his foot as he examined the texture of the wooden boards. Please, Link. She slid her hands across the table and took his in them. Please, I don't want to be alone yet. Not yet. I'm not ready. She let out a sigh. I might not ever be. And that's how he found himself, with his face practically pressed against the wall in his own bed. He had tension in every muscle he had, and wondered what he was going to do if he had to get up in the middle of the night and crawl over the princess. She seemed to be fine on her side, with her back pressed against his, in his clothes. This is exactly how you slept with her last night. What's the difference? She shifted, propping herself on an elbow. Back still to him. What's wrong? Nothing. You were never a good liar. Something is wrong. She shifted again, and goddesses, now her voice was directly in his ear, her hand resting lightly on his bicep. His face flushed. You are all tension and angles tonight. Why? He shook his head. I don't know. Link. She shifts herself back a little, so she isn't pressed against him, and he lets out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. The other morning, I woke up and you were using my stomach as a pillow. I know. Why are you so uncomfortable? I don't know. This is my bed, you're wearing my shirt, it feels different and weird. Her fingers float off his arm, and she pushes herself away, and that doesn't feel right either. He rolls to face her, back against the wall. She's a foot away on her side, hands folded under her cheek. Moonlight spills from the windows across the bed. He can hear frogs in the pond outside, and the low thrum of insects. He tries to explain, I needed to protect you outside. It's safer than it was, but it's still open. I don't need to protect you here. The walls do that. She reached a hand out to push a lock of his hair behind his ear, and he shivered under her touch. Does this feel unsafe? She asked. Does it? He wasn't really sure. He still struggled with exactly what happened to him. He still doesn't remember. Not really, even when it feels like he should. He knows they knew each other well, but he doesn't know how, and he hadn't had to think about it until now. And now, yes, it feels like it might be dangerous. Maybe, he whispered back. She pulled her hand away for a moment, and they just watched each other. What if we sleep on your porch? She asked. It's outside, but close to the house. Would that feel better? He thought about the proposal for a long minute. It would feel good to be under the stars, with the frogs and the insects singing to them, out in the open again, away from the protection of his roof and safe, sturdy walls. Morning found them spooned up, her arm loosely around his waist, with her face resting against his back. He faced out toward the pond and the yard, both their backs to the front door, safe.
Oh, that was really cute.
That was super cute.
I like Dr. Stucky's just really good at having like this soft, fluffy, just nice, comfy, safe feeling. I like that.
I want to say, like, with the intention that a lot of people draw away from fan fiction, the slash fic, if you will.
Oh, sure.
Like, there's that potential energy, and it's kind of like it's a will they, won't they that I'm actually interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
For real, like, Dr. Steggy, I need you in my life. Because I really love your writing, and I love how you write Zelda and Link. It's delightful. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, I'm really enjoying it.
Definitely.
We mute ourselves while one person reads, and I just, like, blew up the chat with, I need Dr. Steggy in my life, my Zelda life. And oh my gosh, they are so cute.
It's true, because you can't like hear me going like "aw" or giggling at different parts, but we wanted to like make sure that people get to hear and enjoy your story without all of our commentary. So just know we are reacting quietly behind the muted mics. That was a lot of fun.
That was great.
Very much.
Well, what do you think, Mercedes? Do you want to do 2 Zeldas in a row, or do you want to do a Zelda sandwich?
Oh, I'd feel bad doing 2 Zeldas in a row.
Okay.
It'll give me more time to psych myself up.
Okay. Mine's kind of a long one. I like went to measure the word count, and it's like 4,992. So it's a little long. I mentioned in the last one that I really wanted to do a fan fiction of one of my favorite characters from our podcast, D&D Adventure Cosplay Chronicles. And that is Tolan's grandma, Maggie, or Mima.
Grandmima! I love Grandmima. Tolan is such an idiot and doesn't know how cool she is.
I know. Like, she has all these, like, barely hinted at adventures. And it was just kind of like an open book that I could, like, have fun and play with and do whatever I wanted with. And so hopefully David forgives my creative license because I've never actually written for the author sitting right in front of me.
I cannot wait to see what you do with the world.
I'm excited.
I'm excited because I freaking love Grand Mima, and I want to know more about her. And this is like, oh yay, fanfiction!
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
let's
excited.
do this.
I know you mentioned slash, and I hope that's okay. It doesn't it's not super exciting or anything because I did keep to our PG rating, but I just kind of headcanoned Mima as pan poly, just had lots of
Aw.
fun and really loved all the people she adventured with. So that's kind of the spirit of the story.
Would you
Tolan
like
in
some
my-
spoilers?
Oh,
Ooh.
She totally is pan poly.
yeah!
Totally pan poly.
Oh my gosh, I feel validated.
Yeah!
I feel like I've been hinting at it here and there in the game.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
yeah, you
Yes.
hit the nail on the head.
Yes, okay.
Tolan in my head is going, I don't want to know this stuff.
Well, Tolan's in the story too, so he gets to.
Oh, yay!
I didn't really title this one, but I think I'm just going to call it The Light Spring.
Ooh.
So here we go. The scent of fresh-baked sweets permeates the air where Maggie stands, idly cleaning up after the morning's work, as cookies cool near the stove and a tiny bronze dragonborn plays at her feet. She pats the last of the flour off on her apron just as a knock comes at the door. Maggie hefts the child in her arms, resting easily on her hip as she pads over to answer. A halfling was waiting, an eager but worried expression on his face as he rests his hands together before him. Maggie lets out a sigh, breath flickering with irritated sparks. "Hello, Donald." Donald had the good grace to look sheepish, and purses his lips briefly before speaking. Lady Margaret, protector of the light, matriarch of mercy, and defender of our realm." Maggie starts to close the door as the baby in her arms lets out a giggle. 3 titles this time. Must be a fairly large favor you've come for, she snorts, unamused. What will it be? Blighted land? A king's daughter in distress? It's Serene. Donald stops her before she gets much further. She's gotten worse. I've been looking for a cure, for anything that might help, but... Maggie swallows, and as if noticing her concern, the tiny dragonborn stills, looking up at his grandmother with wide, curious eyes. "I think I found something that might help. Have you heard of the Light Spring? There's a legend, and anyway..." Donald seems to be searching for the right words. "You two were always so close." There's history there, worn down and weathered by the years, but Maggie can't help but feel a pang of regret, heart heavy with the thought of her sister in arms. They'd chased away the darkness, but no miracle comes without a price, and Serene had gladly paid. It had been too hard, too much to see one who'd shone so brightly slowly fade, no matter what cure or mythical item they might find, and finally, Maggie had to walk away. But if there was one name that could summon her from even the depths of retirement, it was Serene. Roseport was a fairly peaceful city. Sea met land for miles in both directions, cold but full of sandy beaches, the spray cool and salty, their people thick-skinned with soft hearts and warm meals to see them through the chill of their watery home. Maggie wrapped her little grandson Tolan up tightly, bundled in soft furs where she carried him in a sling and marched her way down to the shore. Donald had given her just enough to go by, and as she neared the city, she could feel it herself. Faint but unmistakable, the scent of magic, soft and warm despite the cold. Asking around town had been fruitful. The townfolk knew, of course, in that direction lay the Light Spring, a glowing pool that had been a miraculous safe haven to lost sailors, light that led them home, but most importantly, it was part of a hand-fasting ceremony, a place to tie 2 hearts as one. Once each season, lovers would trek to the spring when the tide ran lowest, revealing the mouth of a cave that went deep down to the spring itself. Atlanta was promised to another, but Mersena begged her to come away before she could be wed, to choose love over what fate had decided. And so the 2 eloped, hiding away at the mouth of the Light Spring, but Atlanta's father was enraged and sent for every hired hand he could summon to track them down. Terrified, the women turned deeper into the cave, struggling through the darkness until they finally reached the deepest chamber. The Light Spring, Donald had supplied, nodding seriously. Their storyteller was a pleasant and friendly woman, Asina, her hair dark and just showing bits of gray, the wrinkles on her face faint, only just beginning to appear, and told of a lifetime of smiles and laughter. She owned an inn, one of the few with space to spare, now that the ceremony was nearly upon them. The next handfast was less than a week away, and folks would be showing up to celebrate with their loved ones, ensuring full rooms and plenty of work. Indeed, it was. The glow was dim, but just enough to see one another as their candles burned their last. Mersena pulled the ribbon from her hair and took Atlanna's hand, tying them together with a promise that they should never part so long as their hearts were one. Did they? Maggie finds herself asking, caught up by the tale. Asina's smile was kind and understanding as she shook her head. Their union was blessed by the spirit of the light spring. As the tide returned and the water began to rise, they shared a last kiss, then leapt together into the spring, thinking it better to die as one than live separate lives. The light spring drew them close to its holy glow, welcoming them into its warm embrace. Its light shone brighter than ever before, like the sky at midday. The tide came in, but still their hands held fast, and they found they weren't short of breath, nor did the salt sting their eyes as the water surrounded them. A miracle. When the tide receded again, it was dark, but the light of the spring remained, bright and powerful. Atlanna's father had given up hope that his daughter had survived, and wept at the cave's entrance, though even the miraculous light could not distract him from his tears. He was penniless, all of his savings wasted away in pursuit and pushing her toward a marriage she didn't want. When he saw the women leave the cave together, unharmed, he forgot his anger and begged their forgiveness. Tallin, barely a pair of eyes peeking up from his grandmother's makeshift carrier, brightens immediately at the story's turn, apparently pleased by the happy ending. Asina smiles back at the little dragonborn and nods. Mersena and Atlanna returned to Roseport, living out their days near the sea where they'd first fallen in love. They tied Mersena's ribbon over the door of their home to remind them each day of the miracle that let them stay together. And so, to this day, when two lovers wish to pledge their lives together, they journey to the light spring. While they don't tempt fate by staying too long at the spring when the tides turn, they hold a ceremony there in the deepest chamber of the cave while the waves are at their lowest, tying their hearts together as one with a promise before returning to their friends and families to celebrate. And when they return home, they tie the ribbon above their door to remind each of their own journey and what they've sacrificed for one another in the name of love. As if on cue, a shadowy figure a few tables away coughs and pulls their hood lower. Donald leaves Maggie's side to go see them, and Maggie feels a cold apprehension in her stomach. She nods her thanks to the storyteller and follows Donald, recognizing the graceful hands of the hooded figure, fingertips darkening with sickness well before the hood falls back. Serene looks so close to how Maggie remembers, her elven features only touched by weariness and the lingering effects of their last adventure together, not by age or time. When she looks up at Maggie, her smile is faded, but it still hits the same, a stinging in her chest that no curatives could ever fix. "It's good to see you," the elven woman speaks, eyes lingering on Maggie's for a moment before falling to the child she carries. "Is this—" "Tolan," Maggie nods, "my grandson." There's a touch of sadness in Serene's eyes as she nods, unspoken years of missed events and all life's subtle changes hovering in the corner of her smile. "He has your eyes." Maggie sits at the table finally, quick to cut through the small talk. "Is it real? This light spring? You really think it can cure you?" Serene takes a breath, and it's painful to see how her small frame trembles with it. "It's a chance." Maggie frowns slightly. "Did Donald put you up to this? You seemed perfectly content to tear yourself apart for the sake of the greater good. What changed?" Serene looks down at the table, clasping her fingers together in her lap. "Would you believe I missed you?" At first, the plan had been obvious. Head to the light spring as soon as possible, wait for low tide, and pillage whatever artifact or magic item it was from the holy cave before anyone was the wiser. The cave was guarded. Apparently, Atlanna and Mersena's miracle had spawned an entire religion, and in the hundreds of years since, maidens gathered to safeguard the spring and to pass blessings on to the faithful who made the journey to the cave's deepest well. The Maidens of the Light officiated the upcoming handfast ceremony and led lovers to make their pledges, then out once more to be received by their families and friends. which meant that sneaking in and out could be difficult and easily make enemies of the believers throughout the entire city. The only way in, then, would be for the two of them to pose as lovers, to be guided to the light spring, find the relic, and hopefully make it back without alerting everyone of what they'd done. It was hard to form a solid plan when they knew so little of what the cave truly contained, but even if they couldn't reach the relic that way, they'd have much more solid understanding of the cave and how securely it was hidden away. So we'll have to pose as a couple, Maggie comes to the obvious conclusion. It hardly bothered you before. Serene's smile is teasing and not altogether unwelcome. And Donald, you'll be on babysitting duty, Maggie chuffs, quick to change the subject. Tolan is teething, and he's just started to learn how to use his fire breath, so I hope you know how to flame-proof the place. She hands the halfling a few enchanted items, as well as Tolan's favorite toys to keep him occupied. As they turn in for the night, heading up to their shared quarters, Maggie turns the plan and what it entails over in her mind. Old feelings and old wounds alike flare up, and what she wouldn't have given for Serene to show this kind of willful self-preservation years ago. It rankled that Serene hadn't trusted their comrades to fight together, taking on so much by herself and spurning the support of their found family. She held her suspicions for now, the need to focus on the task at hand the most important. Most troubling, perhaps, was how easily she found herself falling into old habits. Walking at Serene's side, a steady presence, joking easily, hidden smiles and glances full of meaning. Of course, it made it all the more obvious how Serene's condition had degraded, the lack of balance in her perfectly poised steps, the blackened veins spreading like vines over her honeyed skin, and the way she fought for breath when she thought no one was paying attention. When they finally had a moment alone, Maggie didn't hesitate to confront her. Serene, you let it get this bad? It was a statement, not a question, and Serene didn't seem sure how to respond, as if only now realizing the toll her sickness had taken on her body, now that she was faced with it. There was a long silence before she replied, struggling to meet Maggie's eyes. It's all right, Margaret. She didn't attempt to add any false cheer to her tone, not when it was just the two of them. Just promise me, Maggie settles her hands on her hips, looking at the elven woman with a mixture of concern and care, that this is really what you want. Serene's hesitation before replying was answer enough. Maggie stepped forward, holding out a blue satin ribbon procured at the market while they'd stalked around for information, under the pretense of being just another couple, happy to be in town for the hand-fasting ceremony. It held a double meaning, of course. In the local folklore, the ribbon was meant to tie two hearts together. Such a gift was as good as a proposal, though this offering was tinged with the falsehoods of their quest. I thought it would be a little more convincing. Maggie's scaled hands draw back as Serene accepts the gift, tying her long auburn hair back in a style reminiscent of long ago, and she swallows back the offer for Serene to take its other meaning. Maggie, Serene starts, interrupted by Donald and Tolan bouncing into the room, one chasing the other in a fit of giggles, until Maggie bends to scoop up the baby dragonborn, tipping him upside down as she tries to give him a berating look. Causing trouble already, I see, she smiles, glancing over at Serene as she tries to push from her mind how their conversation might have ended. The hand-fasting ceremony arrived, and Maggie couldn't decide if the week had gone by agonizingly slowly or far too fast. Their small interactions had started out so painful, but the more she was exposed to them, the more comfortable she got, the more she wanted those feelings, despite knowing exactly how dangerous that path would become if she kept indulging it. How much was play and how much was lingering affection of bygone times? They walked in silence to the light spring. She should feel relieved. After a week of pretending and planning, they were almost through. In just a few more hours, they'd be able to leave this place with the Light Springs relic in hand and a chance that Serene might be free of the blight that cursed her. The Maidens of the Light were aptly named, their clothing in light pastels, their hair bound in intricately braided styles with ribbons woven together. They greeted each couple with soft smiles and words of encouragement as they gathered before the entrance to the cave. Serene's hair had been done up as well, and despite the short notice, she'd managed a few decorative braids, beads, and pins, arranging it so she could easily pull the primary ribbon for the ceremony without disturbing the style too much. "Welcome, children of the light," a woman with robes slightly more elaborate than the other maidens spoke up, beginning the handfast celebration. Our hearts are full to see that so many have chosen to pledge their lives to one another this season. Remember how precious a thing love is. Treat it kindly and it will see you through any adversity. They stood with the other couples, directed by maidens who flitted about between them, helping them to the proper places, where to stand, how to hold one another's hands as they made their pledge. Serene, lovely as she looked, seemed to be making a concerted effort not to look Maggie in the eyes. Her hands were soft and frail, surrounded by Maggie's claws, but she held them gently, offering a light squeeze and a hopeful expression. Mercena and Atlanta's blessings be upon you this sacred day, the woman continued, managing to keep a soft timbre to her voice that still carried far enough to be heard. To begin the rite and enter the light spring, please complete your pledges. Serene tenses, and she can feel Maggie's grip tighten minutely, as if reminding her of their reason for being here, to stay and complete the ceremony, or perhaps it was a reminder not to run away. Regardless, Serene stilled and kept her gaze lowered as she spoke. I pledge my love with hope that it will be kept safe in the harbor of your heart, Serene recited. With you, I'll face any peril, overcome every trial, and celebrate each triumph. May our hearts be as one as we entwine our fates, today and each day, till the end of my life. There was a moment of silence, and Serene worried that she'd missed something, or completed a phrase incorrectly. She let her gaze flick upward, catching Maggie's solemn expression. The Dragonborn closed her eyes. Truths are often uncomfortable, but she'd always rather face them. Better to say it, she knows now, than to live with regrets. I won't pledge anything I don't mean. Maggie leans closer, though there is no note of accusation in her voice. I pledge my strength, she began, low enough that Serene can hear, but quiet enough that those around them would only hear the soft rumble of her voice. With hope that it will keep you safe, despite how you throw yourself into danger, leaving no safe harbor. Serene's expression stills, eyes cold, but she doesn't let go or break away. I'll face any peril, overcome every trial, no matter what doubts may remain. I know I'll celebrate our triumph in the end. Maggie's tone was serious, and she knew the only doubts were Serene's own. Maggie was strong, had always been strong, but strength alone wouldn't be enough to save Serene. The blood of our hearts beat as one, entwining a fate I wish to share, she promises. Today and each day till the end of my life. Serene swallows, as if trying to rid herself of nerves as she nods slowly. She shouldn't be surprised that Maggie would be so direct, but even so, it hits like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. Before Serene could get another word out, the maidens were hurrying them along, through the cave's entrance and toward the light spring within. Maggie didn't let go of her hand. They managed to be the last group to enter the cave, much to their mutual relief, and the path was well worn to the point of being slippery in places, but obvious to follow. There were no candles. The cave should have been dark, but as the legends told, the entire place bathed them in a soft, pulsing glow. The cave's air was still and quiet, and soon they saw couples walking back along the path, having completed their pilgrimage to the holy spring. None of them spoke, but they offered smiles and waves of greeting, their hands wrapped together with varying colors of ribbon to show they'd completed the rite. The journey took the better part of an hour, and the tides had only just started to echo through the cave, signaling their return, as Maggie and Serene entered the chamber of the light spring. Even without the ability to detect magic, one would have been able to appreciate the warmth and serenity of its glow. This was where they were to bind their lives together, metaphorically at least, wrapping the ribbon in a series of knots, each representing a different promise for a bright future with a loved one. Serene didn't wait. She stepped toward the natural glowing pool, reaching out for the light spring's magic. It called back from deep within the cold water, but didn't draw nearer, as if stuck or rooted to another powerful force. She glances back at Maggie. It's further down, she explains. Stuck, I think. Maggie considers this, shucking off the heavy coat and light armor before placing them on the cistern's stony ledge. Hopefully they'd be back before the water rose too much further. I'll lead, Maggie insists. While it seems obvious enough to follow the light to its source, Serene bites back a reply and nods, taking a few steps into the surprisingly deep well. The water was clear, but the deeper it went, the more muddled and blurry the light source seemed. There was a sheer drop, the pool going from a shallow pond to a sheer cliff, only a few steps in. Maggie waded forward and gives a brief nod before taking a deep breath and plunging into the depths. Serene watches only a moment, concern in her features before she follows, breath hitching as the cold water hits. Her body is weak, but she drives it on, insistent. Under the water, it's easier to trace the light, though it is further than it seemed, some 20 feet below the surface, clinging to the rock wall in a small alcove. The relic looks oddly plain, a glowing bauble small enough to fit in Maggie's open palm. There's something strange in the bubble of light that surrounds it. The magic that wraps it tightly pulses and writhes like vines, as if another magical entity had tried to envelop it, to harness its power, but the two act like oil and water, one rejecting the other, their opposition causing the cracks and flashes of light that seem to continuously radiate. Without hesitation, Maggie was already reaching for it, hand outstretched toward the relic. The flash of light that follows is blinding, to the point where Serene worries she really has lost her sight. But after a moment light returns, muted and pale, only just enough to see by. The last of Serene's breath catches and her hand flies to her mouth. Maggie was gone. Serene tries not to panic. Her air is growing short, and even if her body were in better condition, it's so hard to see in the murky water. She lets her eyes close for a moment in concentration. A gathering of will, and another flash of light hits. This time, it was as the legend said. The water didn't feel cold. Her lungs didn't burn with lack of air. She can see clearly, and yet there is little to see. The world around her has gone a stark white, and the only one before her is a small, human-looking figure. The magic swells around them, a mixture of the relic and something older, something wild. "Why have you come here?" the figure asks. As Serene nears, moving slowly through the magic waters, she noticed that they seem to have feminine features, a soft, heart-shaped face, wavy dark hair, and full lips. The eyes, though, are dark and deep, with only the faintest flicker of light behind them. "Please," Serene tries, a helplessness crawling within her. "Where is the other? The one who was with me?" "In time," it says. "Why have you come?" Serene hesitates this time. "The relic. I need its power to seal something away." The spirit seems surprised, the childish face blinking owlishly at her, shaking their head faintly. "I need it. This place is a safe haven. I must protect those who seek it." "Why?" Serene replied. Her tone isn't demanding or angry, more curious as to what drove this spirit toward such a goal. "People have come here for centuries, wishing for safety. I have always tried, but..." The child seems troubled, hurt to be admitting its powerlessness. "You're the spirit of this spring?" she asks. "I was," the child agrees, "but now I've become so much more. With the light and growing promises of those who have come before, I can protect those who need refuge. I can keep them safe now." It would be difficult enough to convince power-hungry humans to give up their magical items or mysterious keepsakes, but spirits, storms, or barely physical entities all threw chaos into the mix. If she didn't bargain with the creature, Maggie could be lost and the curse no closer to being solved. "There was someone with me. She needs protection too. She can't find her way home without it. And she..." "Why were your hands not intertwined?" it asks, cutting her off. "Our hands? If it is as you say, your companion, why would you enter without twining your hands together? The seas are dangerous and wild. They can be cruel." "We didn't come for that. For the ceremony, I mean," Serene tries to explain, but the spirit only looks confused and apprehensive. "You pledged yourselves outside the cave," the spirit insists, tone growing almost accusatory. "If your pledge was not true, what does she mean to you?" Serene tenses. She hadn't been expecting such dire consequences for such a frivolous ceremony. She might not have meant those words, had hardly been thinking of their meaning as she spoke them aloud, but she meant them. Serene's lip trembles then, her will on the edge of breaking. She knew. She'd known it at the time, known it even years past as they'd traveled this wild world together. Maggie could never fake something like this. She was too honest, and the reminder that none of her pushing had created any real distance was both devastating and beautiful. "Please, give her back. I protect those who come here for sanctuary. Will you continue to hurt her?" Serene felt a chill run through her. The spirit didn't understand. Keeping Maggie at a distance might hurt her now, but in the long run it was for the best. She was protecting her as before, as always. She didn't want Maggie to be hurt like the others who'd gotten too close. Or will you make your pledge true? The spirit waves an ephemeral hand and Maggie's body appears, floating serenely between them, looking as if she were only lost in sleep and not in the thrall of this spirit's magic. Hurting her is the last thing I could wish for, Serene says truthfully. The spirit seems to wait, watching, and for a moment Serene is at a loss. What did it want? The thought strikes her almost immediately, though, and she pulls the long blue ribbon from her hair, loosing the braids and beads as it slips free, her hair floating wildly in the strange magic pool. She holds the ribbon aloft for a moment and then reaches for Maggie's hand, grasping the right firmly with her left and looping the ribbon around their wrists in a series of knots. With you, I'll face any peril, overcome every trial, she begins, struggling for the words of the ceremony. No, the spirit shakes their head. Choose the words you really mean. It was easier now that she didn't have to look Maggie in the eye to say it, but she searches for the words, something she can say and truly mean. I wish we could be closer again. I wish the Blight's curse hadn't happened, not like this. I wish I could forgive you, but you'll never see saving this worthless life as the trouble it is. Don't just wish, promise. I can't. Tell her. I can't promise to be with you now, but if by some miracle we get through this, not just today, but all of this, if you ever see everything I am and was and could be and you still choose to stay, I'd never leave your side. The last thing Serene remembered was the slow smile that appeared on the spirit's lips. They woke together, coughing water, skin chilled and bodies shivering. They felt cold stone against their skin and scales, water ebbing and flowing around them, and Serene shudders with relief as she sees the faintly breathing form beside her, their hands bound together with her blue hair ribbon. The relic hovers just inches from the ground between them, its light soft and free from whatever spell had held it before. Serene looks on for a moment in stunned disbelief. The spirit had brought them back, and the relic. Maggie, she starts, voice faltering as she pushes herself up, body weary fighting both blight and cold. Maggie shakes herself off, groaning, rolling to get up and pulling Serene comically along with her, both of them waterlogged and exhausted. We have to get out, the tide is rising, Serene insists, finally getting a leg up and tugging herself to her feet, even if she has the leaden weight of her partner tied to one wrist. Maggie muttered what sounds like a very unladylike string of curses, but upon seeing the relic at last, her face visibly brightens. It worked? Serene wanted to change. She could feel it coming, long before today, in the little things. What she missed of her old life had already missed of those around her, mortals coming and going in the long span of years she had before her. She wasn't ready. There was too much left unresolved, too many phantoms of her past that had a hold on her life, had laid claim to it before the soft and loving hearts of friends took up residence there. It didn't seem fair that she would feel this way, only after her life felt like it was over. How could the world give her a taste of happiness like this? It was a long time before she understood, but she never let go of that simple blue ribbon. It was a promise, and maybe not one she could make good on in her lifetime, but one she'd hold on to, even if it was only the smallest sliver of hope. Mima, Talon asks, on no particular evening, his snout flecked with the remnants of dinner, as he looks up at his beloved grandmother. Did you see the package that came today? What's that, Tolan? Maggie calls from the kitchen, but Tolan has already taken off, spurred on by excitement as he picks up the parcel and holds it out. Looks kinda old for having just got here, he remarks, turning it over. What do you think it is? The package is small, no tag, no address, and the blue ribbon that holds it together is well faded with time, but she takes it from him gently and smiles. A promise, she says, sniffling, her words oddly thick. Have I ever told you about your Auntie Serene? The end.
Yay!
Yay! Sorry, that was so long.
That was so cute.
Oh, yay.
I love that.
Oh, good. I just thought, because, like, Maggie's always so good at giving advice and telling people, like, how to communicate better. And I thought it would be interesting to explore some of, like, the relationships and, like, reasons, maybe regrets she had that helped her learn to do that better herself and among her companions. So,
Aww.
I think a lot of people oftentimes forget that wisdom comes from trial and error.
Yeah.
And, like, that's why so many people will say, well, look to your elders, because they've gone through the trials. They've had their errors, they've had their successes, and they know what's worked for them in the past. And that's not saying what's worked for them will work for us or for you. But I love this. It's a sign of struggle. It's them recalling possibilities and what ifs. And it was lovely. I absolutely loved that, Pan. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It was really good. It was so sweet and just like, I love Maggie. She's such a good character.
I love Maggie too. All right, Mercedes, are you ready?
Okay, I think I'm ready.
Okay,
so, just to preface with you guys, this has a couple of holes in it. Add that I'm going to fill with notes. But yeah, so here is my, goodness, it's been ages since I've actually like written a full-on fanfic. And this is based on one that I've been obsessing over for the longest time. I have to throw another gush at Pan, I'm just still gushing over that. I swear I'm focusing.
I'm glad you liked it.
I feel like this definitely does not stand up to either of what we just read, but I'm going to give it a shot. So
we just want to hear your creative energy.
It's energy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We believe in you.
Okay. So, starting note. So this takes place in Termina. So everyone knows Ocarina of Time, and at the end of that, Child Link leaves Hyrule and ends up in Termina, and the events of Majora's Mask happen. It has now been years, and Link has essentially grown up in Termina. The sun began to rise over the golden fields just outside of Clocktown. A large indent in the field, roughly shaped like a foot, stood out darker than the rest of the grains. It was faded, like the memory of its making, by the residents of the town nearby. Clocktown, at first glance, is a simple city with bakers, bars, banks. It even has a mayor, but upon closer inspection, the city has more than just pointy-eared residents. The mayor is conversing with Deku scrubs, small woody creatures dressed in leafy royal regalia of their home. In the marketplace, Gorons, these large stone creatures, help put up decorations, while the Zora settle their fish feet in a fountain and practice their music for the upcoming festival. A small imp-like creature, with an awkward wooden body, climbs through the window of a local inn. Climbing being struggling, because he shouldn't be there, and local inn meaning he probably shouldn't be there either. Below him, a carpenter is frantically searching for his missing hammer. The imp giggles, slides inside the window, hammer in his belt. "You shouldn't have done that, Skull Kid," a yellow glowing fairy flies out from under his hat. "We're supposed to be nice, especially this week. You promised to behave." Skull Kid merely giggled again. "I'll put it back, Tail. I promised. Just need to borrow it." The mischievous imp smiled and gestured to the bed in the room. "Now help me wake up Link. He's late." You sure about that?" Tail asked as she flitted over the bed. "Because I don't think he's here." Skull Kid scrambled over to the bed, tugged at the covers, and was like, "Maybe he's just hiding underneath." And the covers fell to reveal a very empty bed. Well, where did he go? Link was far away, yet nearby. Depends on what you think of where that is when it deals with things of the underground lost woods. He was asleep. His head leaned up upon a pile of rocks, and a small wood carving of a fairy was on top of it. A small plaque made of wood laid on the ground next to the pile, askew. It read, "To my friend, I am lost without you." A large horse stood nearby, nibbling at the grass, and a small, dark purple fairy woke up on the saddle. The fairy yawned, stretched its wings, and then panicked. "Link, Link, Link, Link!" The fairy flew over his head, and then shouted, "Hey, listen!" Link shot upright at the sound of that, and looked around for a moment, as if looking for someone, but his gaze met with the purple fairy. His face flashed a brief moment of disappointment, changing to a smile and a small shrug. Tattle, the fairy, continued his little tirade about waking up on time and how Tail would feed them to the Stelfos if they were late for the festival. Tail promised someone that we would help with building a thing, and I can't remember, but I'm trying to be responsible like she told me to, and you should get up, and the fairy trailed on while Link gathered his things, pausing at the pile of rocks to place a small flower and the wooden plaque, putting it up right at its base, and then climbed onto Epona's saddle. Tattle, now out of breath, settled on Link's shoulder and sighed. I'm terrible at responsibility. I hate it. Link patted his friend, then gave Epona a nudge and departed into the forest. Entering the Lost Woods was nothing new to Link. He had done this hundreds of times since defeating Majora and saving Termina from a falling moon. Tattle still shivered when they passed under the dark trees, but the exit was always close. Light filtered through the trees, and the fields before Termina opened up to them. Note: the forest always dumps Link in different places outside of Termina Field, despite him always entering it from under the clock tower in town. For those who may not remember, the Lost Woods is under the clock tower, and that is where Link first appeared in Clocktown. And so he always goes and enters it, and it always dumps him back in Termina Field. Deep in Link's heart, he wished for the view of Hyrule, but he had half-heartedly given up on that years ago. He was now 16 years old, close to being the age his body was when he rescued Hyrule from Ganondorf, a heroic deed no one in Hyrule, save for the royal family, knew about. What was Hyrule like now? Had they stopped Ganondorf without his help? Was there peace and his sacrifice to leave, protect the Triforce of Courage and the Ocarina of Time? Had it paid off? He felt like he would never know because the Lost Woods always brought him back to Termina. This strange world that was at first full of familiar faces but not the people he knew from home. The woods would not let him leave now, and, well, the faces of Termina were his friends. And if he ever returned to Hyrule, well, they would be the strangers now. Link entered Castletown, which was abuzz with all the festival preparations, people running back and forth and yelling at each other, and it was much too noisy for Link's liking, but he had promised to help, and so he let Epona take her leave of the fields as an old carpenter approached him. Link? The man eyed the young elf and then held up the small imp Skull Kid by his hands. I think this is yours. Skull Kid cried out in defiance. I am not a thing and you know it. It was a harmless prank. I gave you back the hammer. You didn't need it. Link smiled apologetically and took one of Skull Kid's hands while Tail tut-tutted and sat on Link's shoulder next to Tattle. Link waited for the man to leave while Skull Kid wove a tale of daring, intrigue, and how he was actually rescuing the hammer from the terrible fate of working. Once the old carpenter had left, Link leaned down and stared at Skull Kid, kind of like an adult does to a kid, and waited until he was done with his tale. Remember, we aim to help, not hinder, friend. Link smiled and patted Skull Kid on the head. Skull Kid shrugged and was like, yeah, I know. I just can't help it sometimes. And Link patted him on the head, understanding Skull Kid, by his nature, liked to pull pranks, and maybe one day he'll teach him to pull helpful pranks. Well, it is now time for us to go and help decorate the inn, Tail said from her perch on Link's shoulder. And off they went to go and do that. So I'm going to time skip now to the festival actually running. So the festival's running. It's definitely a lot louder now, and Link is hanging out in the back of the Castletown residence. Not necessarily being part of the festivities, but doing enough to be there. Skull Kid is off dancing with the dancing sisters and trying to figure out their latest dance move as they do something crazy again that they've done every single year. And the smells, the sights, the sounds, everyone's just happy to be celebrating the Festival of Time. And as the music is swelling, Link hears a different tune, something softer, something quieter, distant, familiar. who's playing that? Link gets up and starts walking around the festival, dodging in and out of people, trying to figure out where this sound is coming from, and realizes that it gets louder the closer he gets to the clock tower. And as he gets closer, he fully recognizes the tune, a tune that he barely even played anymore himself. And even then, only when he was by himself in the Lost Woods with no one else around. He whispers to himself, Soraya, and dashes into the clock tower. Skull Kid, who noticed that Link was being not really social, but more within the crowds than normal, sees him run into the tower and follows after him. As Link is running through the basement of the clock tower and making his way into the forest, he hears the dong, the toll of the bells. They still give him shivers, even though it's been years since his long-forgotten battles. But he hears that tune, Soraya's music, coming from the forest, and he races inside. As he comes into the forest, the tall, dark trees are there, and it feels almost as if it's starting to pull him in. And, as always, for some weird magical reason, Epona is there waiting for him. And he jumps upon her, and as he's about to just launch into the forest, Skull Kid calls out, Hey, wait! And Link pauses for a moment and looks back. His friend. His friends. Because Tattle and Tail are also there. And looking warily over Skull Kid's shoulders, wondering what's going to happen next. They've known Link has tried to exit through this forest hundreds of times, tried to leave and go to Hyrule. This time feels different. Link reaches a hand out to them, and Skull Kid goes, Adventure! And runs up to Link, grabs his hand, and jumps onto the horse. Tattle and Tail hesitantly following behind, but also curious. Link then gives Castletown, or the direction of Castletown anyways, one last look before rushing into the forest. And as he gallops away with his friends at his side, you see the plaque, the wooden plaque that he had placed, is actually flipped over from when he had fixed it before, and it says, I will never be lost with friends. And that's it.
Yay!
Yay!
That was cute.
That
what
was
are you
so
saying?
Thanks. Yeah, there's still gaps in there that I want to fill. I just have a hard time with writing.
Yeah.
And then there's city stuff going on.
There's so much going on in Majora's Mask. Holy
I
crap.
know, and I'm like, there's so many different things that I can pull, but I'm like, I don't know which ones I want to pull, you know? And so I'm just like, stuff's happening. Okay, and then we're going to jump to this part, which is important.
It was fun. I want to see what their adventures take them to.
Thanks. I have so many theories on what happens to Link. And Skull Kid has to be with him because it's important. So
nice.
But yeah.
Well, that was fun. Thank you, listeners, for letting us indulge in some fan fiction, fan content these last couple weeks. If you have ideas for an episode coming up in the future, you can always email those to us at cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com
or you can go to cosplaystitchandseam.com and fill out the Googly Google form, or
go to the Facebook page and send us your stories, thoughts, anything along those lines there. And while you're there, join our fantastic Facebook group and our Work in Progress Wednesdays, or you can join our Discord where we have some of the best, awesome people available helping you out, talking about theories, talking about their favorite art. It's so great to watch people just kind of go on and on about the things that they're passionate about. And that's really just so great to see. And let's not forget our fantastic patrons, where you can join these people who are supporting us by throwing us a couple bucks for $3 a month. We give you a shout out on the show. $5 a month, you join our D&D game, much like some of the fantastic people: Cynics at Queer Eye Sci-Fi, Howl Cause, Hot Riku, Renamira, Jazzy Kofed, Jaguar Quinn, Gloria Shu, Sudi, Stacy Pitt, Shock H, and Silver Deeds.
Hey, remember you can catch us in person this coming August 1st at 1 p.m. at SaltCon. We'll be hosting a live episode of the Cosplay Chronicles D&D adventure. And
I'm
if
very
you'd like,
excited.
I know, it's going to be fun. You can even sign up to have a place at the table. We're going to have some pre-rolled characters, but you'll be able to play with all of us, and it should be a lot of fun. As always, if you want to check out Fox Beauty Cosmetics, that's Fox spelled with 2 X's, beautycosmetics.com. Use the promo code Stitch and Seam to receive 10% off their all vegan, not tested on animal products. Thanks as always to Macy Roberts for the use of her music as our theme song, and David Jeffress for his amazing editing. Why don't you tell us about your podcast?
So I run a couple of different podcasts. I run Comic Trades Monthly, where we talk about your favorite comic book collection in a book club format. So if you enjoy talking about the things that we grew up on or anything along those lines, Spider-Man, Power Rangers, or maybe even some comics that you may never have heard of, Metal Shark Bro is a thing that no one ever heard of before, and it's so dope. It's so dope. You should go check that those episodes.
Gosh. Metal Shark Bro, I love it.
Yep, we got to talk to the authors a while ago, so they were fantastic human beings. So if you enjoy comic books and kind of the ridiculousness of comics, go join Dane and I over there. And if you enjoy audio dramas, if you enjoy the story of people trying to come together or one person trying to bring people together after the end of the world, I wrote an audio drama called The Last Voice. It's the story of one man in Utah trying to bring the world together in some small capacity with little bits of hope here and there. So if you enjoy that, go check out The Last Voice.
It's very good.
Aww.
Yay, I need to get caught up because I heard it's going to get intense.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm so excited. Yeah, so thank you guys again for sending in all your fan fiction. Remember to practice safe text, use commas, and never miss a period. We'll see you next time.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's bad. Okay. Bye, guys. We love you. Bye.